you so afraid of? Is it something tangible, something physical, a person, an animal, confrontation, high places, speed, some threat to your safety or security? Or is it something more existential than that? Fear of death, fear of oblivion, fear of existing one moment and not existing the next, and never knowing when that moment will be. What is it about fear that drives us? Fear chases us and we run from it. We flee from fear, and yet we're also constantly running towards fear, aren't we? We expose ourselves to unnecessary danger to feel the thrill of fear. We drive faster than we need to. We jump out of airplanes with parachutes. We walk on tightropes. We scale cliffs with our bare hands, knowing that any moment we could lose our grip and fall to our doom. And even those of us who shun the danger still court the fear. We go to scary movies. We attend haunted houses. We don't want to feel as though our lives are truly imperiled, but we want to feel that feeling of terror shoot up our spine. It's one of the strangest of human compulsions, isn't it? That need to take pleasure in being terrified. What is it that does it for you? What is it that you think of or that you subject yourself to when you want to feel that rush of fear? I don't know, just some thoughts I had. It being Halloween week and all, I was just thinking about that. I thought I would share that. I hope that wasn't too much for you. Welcome to the Ramble, everybody. Hi. I was fortunate to grow up in a small town community that was not so religiously zealous that it ever had much problem with Halloween parties. There were a lot of... I grew up in a town where the population of the town proper was maybe 300 or 400 people. It was a tiny little town. And there were 4 or 5 churches in town. It's still a majority white, very religiously Christian, politically conservative community. And yet there were never really any issues with Halloween, especially at school. When I was in elementary school and middle school, we had Halloween parties that were called such. We even had a Halloween parade in elementary school where all the kids would dress up in their costumes and march around the school, and the parents would come and take pictures, and we'd have like a big Halloween party. And it was cool because it was one of the few activities where the entire school participated, all the grades. In my elementary school, it was grades kindergarten through 5th grade, and everybody would come together as like one big student body and participate in this Halloween parade and the Halloween parties. And it was a lot of fun. And I remember all the Halloween costumes that I wore to school. I dressed up for Halloween in school every year from kindergarten through 8th grade. After high school, I figured I was too big for it and I didn't dress up anymore. But kindergarten, I think all of these costumes were homemade costumes made by my mother, who was a very talented seamstress and was always very gung-ho to make my costumes for me. In kindergarten, I was a skunk, complete with a big stuffed tail that attached to the back with a little chain that you weren't supposed to notice so the tail wouldn't drag on the floor. I was a skunk in kindergarten. 1st grade, I was Spider-Man. 2nd grade, I was Superman. That was a cool costume. 3rd grade, I was an astronaut. Again, really cool costume, like a silver jumpsuit like Buck Rogers and a silver plastic space helmet. 4th grade, I was Batman. That's the year that Tim Burton's Batman movie came out, so I was Batman in 4th grade. 5th grade, I wore like a karate gi. I think I had taken like a karate class or something, and I wore like a karate outfit. But I was never anything more than a white belt. But I had my mom make me a gi and a black belt, so I dressed up as a black belt for 5th grade. 6th grade, I wore this weird kind of tiger getup. I'm not sure what I was going for there. I was dressing up as like a tiger, but it was basically just like tiger pants, like Zubas. and a t-shirt and like a tiger, like a domino mask. It looked really weird. It wasn't a very cool costume. And then 7th and 8th grade, both years, I was Batman again. So those are all the costumes that I wore. All homemade costumes. Very cool. And after that, I kind of grew out of it. I didn't really dress up anymore until I got to be an adult. You know, one of the parts of Halloween that I always look forward to and have for, I guess, 25 years now, and it really is seriously one of my favorite parts of Halloween. It's the Simpsons Halloween special. Even though I know, and I'm generally not one of these hipsters about the Simpsons who's like, oh, it's so much, it used to be so much better. It's not nearly as good as it used to be. I mean, it's not nearly as good as it used to be. It's definitely off its creative peak and has been for some time. But I'm still a fan. I still watch the new episodes. I still love The Simpsons. And The Simpsons Halloween special has always been a highlight of my year. And it's always been one of the favorite parts about Halloween to me. And especially those early Halloween episodes from maybe the first 6 or 7 years that they did them. Oh, some of those were classics. Some of the best episodes of The Simpsons, period, were Simpsons Halloween shows. The first year they did it, they finished with that amazing final segment of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, where it was the animated Raven, and James Earl Jones did the narration, and it was word for word the poem. They didn't embellish it, they didn't change it. It was just start to finish The Raven as originally written by Poe. And I remember a couple years after that, Animaniacs did something similar, but they changed the text. And I thought, oh, that sucks. They didn't do it like The Simpsons. The Simpsons didn't have to change the text in order to do it and to make it cool and funny. I just thought it was wonderful. And in the following years, they had so many other great ones too. Great Simpsons Halloween shows. Some of the segments that always jump out to me are The Shinning, the spoof of The Shining, where Bart has the ability to read people's minds, and Homer does like the Jack Torrance thing. The one where Homer goes back in time, and I think it's called Time and Punishment, where he repairs his toaster and it sends him back in time, and he keeps having to go back and forth and try to put things right, because every time he makes a tiny little change in the past, it wreaks terrible havoc in the future. The Mr. Burns Dracula one. I mean, that's a great one. I think that's the year also when they had the framing device was Bart Simpson introducing each story from an art gallery like Night Gallery. That was just so many great Simpsons Halloween moments. The monkey's paw, the killer Krusty doll. I mean, you could just go on and on and on forever. So many great classic Simpsons Halloween special moments. And actually, if you're watching this and you want to reminisce, you want to join me in some reminiscing about classic Simpsons Halloween specials, I'm just going off the top of my head. I know there are so many, both from the early years and from the more recent ones, the highlights that I haven't mentioned. If you have some favorite Simpsons Halloween episodes or Simpsons Halloween just individual segments, individual Halloween stories that you love to watch or to remember or made you laugh when you saw them, I would welcome you to share them with me in the comments. Facing fear was always difficult for me as a child. I had a very deeply felt fear of death from really, as soon as I found out what death was. As soon as my mother told me, oh yeah, people die, by the way, you're going to die someday. There's going to come a time when you're just not going to be here anymore. Ever since I learned that, I've had a very deeply felt fear of death. And it was especially strong and especially gripping when I was a young child. And this sort of fed all my other fears. It was sort of the mother fear of everything. And it was difficult for me to face fears. I had fears of all kinds of stuff. Those were difficult fears to face. And the only way to really master a fear is to do just that, is to face it, is to expose yourself to it, and to sort of grow accustomed to it. I actually really did used to be afraid of the dark. We had a room in the basement of our house when I was growing up. It was the laundry room, and it was a room that I had to pass through a lot or go into a lot. And there wasn't a light switch near the door. The light switch was more toward the middle of the room. And this was in the basement. It was underground. There were no windows in this room. And you had to walk maybe 3 or 4 steps through total darkness before you got to the light switch. And I would always take these steps incredibly quickly. I would always like lunge into the room very quickly. And my steps were always sure because I had been through this room so many times that I never was worried about stumbling or falling or anything happening to me, but I just wanted to hit the light so that the room would no longer be dark. I wanted to brighten up the room as soon as possible. And one of the ways I learned to master my fear of the dark was to train myself to take those steps a little slower sometimes, to just be easy, to take a deep breath and be confident and just walk through the dark. And use my rational mind to overpower my irrational, emotional, instinctive sort of panic mind, and say, now you know that there's nothing here. You know this is just the laundry room of your house. There are no predators here. There's nothing is going to happen to you if you stay here in the dark. And eventually I got to the point where I could sit in the dark, and even when you hear those weird unexplained noises, it doesn't really bother you. And it was just a matter of just doing stuff like this, just sitting in the dark. And obviously it's not really dark in the room because I have the computer monitor on and I'm illuminated somewhat, but to you as watching this, it looks like I'm in a very dark room. And it was just doing things like this, getting accustomed to it, getting used to it. Halloween, I think, is a lot about that. Halloween is about getting accustomed to the things we fear. Look at some of the traditional Halloween costumes that people still dress up as. Things like vampires, things like werewolves, things like demons and devils. These are things that in olden times, in more primitive eras of our species, were sources of real terror. People used to be truly, truly afraid of vampires. Some people perhaps still are in some places of the world. They truly believe that these beings exist and that they are out there and that they are threats. These were sources of real fear. Now they're sources of fun. They're things that we dress up as to go to a party, to have a good time. They're jokes. They're punchlines to us. We have completely driven away the real fear of these things, both because science has told us that they're not real, but also because we have mastered them. We have made them to service us. They no longer are threats to us. They're no longer the figures of our nightmares. We've made them subjects of fun. We have sat in the dark room with them, and we've become accustomed to them, and we've befriended them.